The Pacific Theater, 1942 to 1945. The dense jungle undergrowth of the Pacific Islands created a unique combat environment where engagements often occurred at ranges of less than 30 yards. In these conditions, the United States Marine Corps deployed a weapon that would challenge every assumption Japanese forces held about modern warfare: the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. While the historical record of specific combat employment remains limited, the presence of Winchester Model 1897 and Model 1912 shotguns in Marine units throughout the Pacific Campaign represented a tactical capability for which Japanese military doctrine had made no provision. The Imperial Japanese Army had spent decades preparing for war against Western powers. Their training manuals addressed British rifles, American machine guns, French mortars, and Soviet submachine guns. But shotguns, tools they considered for hunting birds rather than implements of war, never appeared in their tactical considerations. This oversight would prove significant. As American forces brought approximately 25,000 Model 97s and 60,000 to 80,000 Model 12s into military service during World War II, Japanese military doctrine in 1942 centered on spiritual power that would overcome material disadvantage. This philosophy wasn't merely propaganda, but a calculated response to industrial reality. Japan produced less steel in a year than America produced in a month. The Imperial Army's solution was to make each soldier superior in close combat, where spirit and training would prevail over mechanical warfare. The tactical expression of this doctrine was the night infiltration attack, followed by close-quarters combat with rifle and bayonet. Japanese infantry trained extensively in these tactics, which had proven successful against Chinese forces, British troops in Malay, and American defenders in the Philippines. The standard engagement sequence was clear. Approach under cover of darkness, infiltrate enemy lines, then overwhelm defenders at close range, where Japanese superiority in hand-to-hand combat would prove decisive. American shotguns invalidated this entire tactical framework. At the close ranges where Japanese doctrine anticipated dominance, a Marine with a Winchester Model 97 could fire 6 loads of double-aught buckshot in approximately 2 seconds, using the weapon's slam-fire capability. Each shell contained 9.33 caliber pellets, creating a spread pattern that made missing nearly impossible in dense jungle vegetation. The Winchester Model 1897, designed by John Browning and refined over 45 years of production, served as the primary Marine shotgun in the early Pacific campaigns. The military version featured a 20-inch barrel, perforated heat shield, and bayonet lug compatible with the M1917 sword bayonet. Most critically, the Model 97 lacked a trigger disconnector, allowing continuous fire by holding the trigger while operating the pump action. The Model 1912, developed by Winchester engineer T.C. Johnson, improved on Browning's design with an internal hammer mechanism that prevented accidental discharge. By 1943, the Model 12 had largely replaced the Model 97 in Marine units, though both weapons continued serving throughout the war. Military procurement records show steady production, though specific combat deployment numbers remain undocumented. The ammunition these weapons fired proved as important as the guns themselves. Standard double-aught buckshot loads contained 9 pellets, each weighing 53.88 grains and measuring 8.38 millimeters in diameter. At 10 yards, the pattern spread to approximately 10 inches, at 20 yards, 20 inches, at 30 yards, 30 inches. In jungle combat, where visibility rarely exceeded 30 yards, this spreading pattern compensated for the difficulty of precise aiming in dense jungle vegetation.
The Guadalcanal campaign of August 1942 to February 1943 marked the first major American offensive in the Pacific. Marines of the 1st Division landed with various weapons, including some shotguns, though their exact number and deployment remain unrecorded in official battle reports. The August 21, 1942 Battle of the Tenarue River, actually Alligator Creek, saw Colonel Kona Ichiki's 917-man detachment virtually annihilated, with 789 Japanese killed. While this battle features prominently in Pacific War accounts, primary sources attribute the Japanese losses primarily to Browning M1917 water-cooled machine guns and 37mm anti-tank guns firing canister rounds, with only passing mention of shotgun use. Throughout the Guadalcanal campaign, Marines employed shotguns primarily for perimeter defense and jungle patrols. Photographic evidence shows pointmen carrying Winchester shotguns during patrol operations, positioned to respond to ambushes in the dense jungle terrain. However, after-action reports focus overwhelmingly on machine guns, rifles, and artillery as the primary weapons affecting battle outcomes. The jungle environment of Guadalcanal created unique challenges for all weapons, but particularly for shotguns. The standard paper-hulled shotgun shells absorbed moisture in the humid conditions, swelling to the point where they wouldn't chamber properly. This problem would persist throughout the Pacific Campaign until the adoption of brass-cased shells. The humidity of Pacific Islands created a critical ammunition problem that nearly negated shotgun effectiveness. Standard commercial shotgun shells used paper cases that absorbed moisture, swelling in the 100% humidity common in jungle conditions. Shells that chambered easily in dry conditions became impossible to load after exposure to tropical moisture. Marines reported shells swelling so badly they had to be hammered into chambers, obviously impossible during combat. This crisis persisted until March 29, 1945, when the military officially adopted the all-brass M19 shell, designated Shell Shotgun Brass 12-Gauge No. 00 Buck M19. These moisture-proof brass cases restored shotgun reliability for the war's final months. The late adoption date explains why many Pacific veterans rarely mention shotguns in their memoirs. For most of the war, ammunition problems severely limited their effectiveness. The United States military formalized shotgun training through Technical Manual TM 9-285, published September 21, 1942. This manual covered the Winchester's Models 97 and 12, Remington Model 11, Stevens Models 520 and 620, and Ithaca Model 37. Marine training occurred at Camp Pendleton, California, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and Parris Island, South Carolina. Training emphasized specific combat applications, point security during patrols, rapid engagement in night defense, cave and bunker clearing procedures, and prisoner guard duties. Marines learned the Model 97's unique slam-fire technique, though instructors warned against over-reliance on this feature due to ammunition consumption and barrel heating. The Marine Corps' Table of Organization, E100, effective from 1943, authorized 306 shotguns per Marine division. These weapons were distributed primarily to military police companies, pioneer battalions, and selected rifle squads for specialized duties. This allocation meant that while shotguns were present in every major Marine operation, they represented less than 2% of a division's small arms. The historical record reveals a striking absence. Japan never filed formal diplomatic protests about American shotgun use, contrasting sharply with Germany's September 1918 complaint that shotguns violated the Hague Convention. German protests in World War I claimed shotguns caused unnecessary suffering and threatened to execute Americans carrying them. Japanese military documents captured during and after the war make no specific mention of shotguns requiring special countermeasures. Training materials focused on countering American firepower generally, machine guns, artillery, and flamethrowers, but never identified shotguns as requiring specific tactical responses. This absence suggests that while individual Japanese soldiers certainly encountered shotgun fire, the weapons never achieved sufficient tactical impact to warrant official attention. Post-war interrogations of Japanese officers similarly lack references to shotguns as particularly problematic weapons. Officers discussed American material superiority, overwhelming firepower, and effective combined arms tactics, but shotguns appear nowhere in these assessments.
The Philippine Campaign of 1944 to 1945 represented the peak of American shotgun deployment in the Pacific. Marine units operating in Luzon and Leyte carried both Model 97 and Model 12 shotguns. Photographic evidence from Leyte shows Marines carrying shotguns on jungle patrols. Training documents from this period emphasize their role in close-quarters fighting against Japanese night attacks, cave defenses, and urban combat in Manila. Shotguns proved particularly effective in prisoner guard duties, where their intimidating appearance and devastating short-range fire discouraged escape attempts. Military police units throughout the Pacific commonly employed shotguns when controlling prisoner movements. The psychological effect of the weapon, large bore, heavy barrel, visible buckshot cartridges, served military police purposes effectively, even when actual combat effectiveness remained questionable. During the invasion of Iwo Jima, February 1945, and Okinawa, April 1945, shotguns accompanied Marine divisions into battle. The chaotic nature of these operations, with combat taking place in caves, tunnels, and bunkers, should theoretically have favored shotgun employment. However, official Marine Corps historical accounts of these battles make almost no mention of shotgun use. This silence in the official record suggests that while present, shotguns remained a marginal weapon system compared to rifles, machine guns, flamethrowers, and demolition charges. The U.S. Army also employed shotguns in the Pacific. Unlike the Marines, the Army had no traditional association with shotgun warfare. Their procurement reflected pragmatic recognition of the weapon's potential in jungle terrain rather than institutional enthusiasm. The Army's standard equipment included both Winchester and Stevens pump-action shotguns, distributed primarily to infantry units in the Philippines and to specialized military police detachments. Combat reports from New Guinea and the Philippines note occasional shotgun use in night defensive positions, where their short-range firepower could break Japanese banzai charges. But these reports remain anecdotal rather than systematic.
Japanese forces themselves never fielded combat shotguns. Their small arms development focused on rifles, light machine guns, and submachine guns. Captured American shotguns appear in post-battle photographs, but no evidence exists of organized Japanese use of these weapons. Their doctrine emphasized the bayonet charge, not close-quarters firepower. The final evaluation of shotguns in the Pacific War must balance three elements. First, they represented less than 2% of Marine small arms, limiting their overall battlefield impact. Second, the technical problem of ammunition moisture absorption crippled their reliability until late 1945. Third, their tactical utility, while undeniable in certain circumstances, rarely determined the outcome of major engagements. Yet the symbolic power of the shotgun in the Pacific War remains undeniable. For the Marines who carried them on jungle patrols, for the MPs who guarded prisoners with them, and for the Japanese soldiers who encountered their devastating short-range fire, the shotgun represented an unexpected element of American firepower, an element the Japanese doctrine had simply never considered. The Winchester Model 97 and Model 12 never achieved the fame of the M1 Garand, the Browning automatic rifle, or the Thompson submachine gun. They remained specialized tools for specific circumstances. Yet their presence in every campaign, from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, demonstrates the American military's adaptability in employing whatever weapons proved useful against a determined enemy in challenging terrain. The dense jungles of the Pacific swallowed many sounds: the cries of the wounded, the roar of artillery, the crash of palm trees under bombardment. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, Japanese soldiers advancing under cover of darkness would hear a different sound: the harsh metallic pump of a Winchester shotgun being racked in the blackness. A sound that meant the ambush was ready. The Marines were waiting, and the spirit of the bayonet was about to meet the steel of American industry. War is not only fought with steel and fire, but with perception, with memory, with the tools soldiers believe will keep them alive when everything else falls away. The shotgun in the Pacific lived in that strange space between myth and practicality. Official records may downplay it. Historians may count its numbers as insignificant. But for the young Marine on point patrol, creeping through vines so thick they strangled the daylight, that short pump-action shotgun wasn't just a weapon. It was reassurance. It was control in a world that had none. Rifle fire cracked in the distance. Machine guns roared across valleys. But in the tight, suffocating green of the jungle, 20 yards, maybe 30, the Garand seemed too long, the Thompson too heavy. What you wanted was something simple: a barrel, a pump, and a shell that would spread out like a storm cloud. That was the shotgun. Japanese tactics made it even more vital. They believed in the banzai charge. They believed that spiritual fury could overwhelm even modern weapons. At night, in the dark, hundreds of men would rise from the shadows, screaming, bayonets flashing. And in that moment, when panic threatened to break the line, one Marine could slam fire 6 shells in less than 2 seconds, pellets ripping through bodies, halting momentum, breaking the charge before it even reached the wire. It wasn't clean. It wasn't glorious. It was brutal, bloody, and close. A different kind of war than the one fought in Europe with tanks and planes. This was a war of whispers, of ambushes, of men seeing the whites of each other's eyes before pulling the trigger. And the shotgun was made for that world. Yet the Marines also knew its limits. The weapon was heavy. Its ammunition swelled with moisture, turning reliable firepower into jammed misery. Many cursed the paper shells until the brass casings finally arrived in 1945. By then, countless patrols had already carried boxes of ruined shells through mud and rain. Still, the shotgun carried a weight far beyond statistics. It carried the weight of fear, of survival, of psychological dominance. Japanese soldiers who encountered it spoke of its terrifying spread. Some believed it was unfair, inhuman even, though their own doctrine of bayonet charges demanded far greater blood. This duality between myth and limitation, between fear and function, made the shotgun one of the Pacific War's strangest weapons. Never the hero, never the star, but always there, in the background, shaping moments no one would forget. Imagine a Marine in 1944. He's 20 years old. He's been on patrol for 6 hours, hacking through vines, listening to the constant buzz of insects and the quiet dread of silence. He grips his Model 12, hand sweaty on the pump, finger brushing the trigger. Every step is a prayer. And then a rustle, a shadow, an ambush. He doesn't think. He doesn't aim. He just pumps and fires, the blast echoing through the jungle, the pellets tearing into the green. His buddy behind him exhales in relief. The patrol moves forward. Another day survived. For that Marine, and for so many others, the shotgun was more than a statistic in a quartermaster's report. It was the difference between life and death, between making it home or becoming another name carved in stone. By 1945, the Pacific War had become a grinding nightmare. The jungles were still thick. The mud was still endless. But now the fight was moving into something even worse. Fortresses of rock and concrete. Caves dug into volcanic stone. Whole islands turned into labyrinths of death. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the names alone still echo with pain. Here, the shotgun followed the Marines once again, into tunnels where flamethrowers roared, grenades bounced, and shadows hid men waiting with bayonets drawn, into bunkers where every corner might conceal an enemy ready to spring, into villages where rubble concealed sniper nests. The Garand may have won the wide-open firefights. The BAR may have laid down the suppressing fire. The Thompson may have been the darling of patrols. But when a Marine kicked down a door, when he dropped into a cave, when he crawled through smoke and fire, the weapon in his hands sometimes was a 12-gauge pump. It was brutal work. There are no glory stories here, just sudden blasts in the dark, just split-second survival, just a young man covered in ash and sweat, pulling the trigger and praying he'd make it out alive. The shotgun didn't win Iwo Jima. It didn't break the back of Okinawa. Artillery did. Air power did. Sheer numbers did. But still, in the hidden corners of those battles, it mattered. It mattered to the men who carried it, who trusted it when nothing else seemed fast enough, close enough, certain enough. And when the war finally ended, when silence fell over the Pacific and the men came home, most left their shotguns behind, but not in memory. For decades, veterans would tell their sons and grandsons about the weapon that roared like thunder at 20 feet. The weapon the Japanese had never expected, never planned for. The weapon that gave them a chance when the jungle tried to swallow them whole. History books may not give it many pages, but in foxholes, on night patrols, and deep in the caves of Iwo Jima, the shotgun wrote its own chapter in blood, smoke, and survival.
And so the war ended. The jungles grew quiet. The caves, once echoing with gunfire, filled only with silence and shadows. The shotgun, that old farmhand's tool, had followed Marines across half the world, from Guadalcanal's swamps to Tarawa's reefs to the black sands of Iwo Jima. It had never been the star of the show. It didn't bring down planes like the flak guns. It didn't smash tanks like the Shermans. It didn't have the fame of the Garand or the speed of the Thompson. But in the darkest places, in the closest fights, it was there. And the men who carried it never forgot. When asked about the shotgun years later, veterans would smile faintly. Some would shake their heads. Some would simply say, "It saved my life." That is the story of the shotgun in the Pacific. A weapon born for hunting fields and farmhouses, but baptized in fire and jungle, forever remembered as a tool of survival in one of the hardest wars mankind has ever fought. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. History isn't just about dates and battles. It's about the people, the weapons, and the choices that shaped every firefight, every heartbeat. So if you enjoyed this journey through the Pacific War and the story of a weapon most history books barely mention, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep storytelling like this. Every click helps me bring you more stories from the past, stories of courage, survival, and the little details that made all the difference. Until next time, this was one soldier's weapon, one war's memory, and one more reminder of how history is written, one shot at a time.